Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is artist Gronk and writer-performer Carol Schlanger. Gronk, who was born in Los Angeles and still lives here, has exhibited his work in galleries across America. He has an international presence because of his participation in group shows. His latest project is called A Living Survey, 1973 to 1993. What is a living survey, Gronk?
Well, a living survey means that I'm not dead yet and I'm having a show in a museum type situation. But actually, what it also means is the fact that I'm going to be on site in the different locations that I go to in a museum and actually do some of the work in front of people as they come into the museum. So it's part performance, part even taking suggestions from people that pass through the museum as to what direction the piece is going to go in.
Oh, I see. So you'll actually be there during the time that the exhibit is, say, at the LA County or Texas or
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah, different sites and different locations that this particular show is traveling to. And usually what happens in situations when I do go into museums, even in Madison, Wisconsin, I'm going there to have a show also. So, and at Cornell was another place where I actually allow people to come in and see the whole process. What I'm trying to do is, in some ways, demystify that whole notion of the artist and how he works so that people can actually talk to him. Doesn't, just go into a museum and see the finished end piece of an artist, but also the process, how it comes about. And to also show the notion that it's a very physical thing. Painting for me, I'm working on large scale. At the museum, it's probably about 30 feet by maybe 50 feet across. The largest piece that I've done, which is about 300 feet by 30 feet high, which is the size of a football field. All of those different pieces are very physical, they take a lot of time, usually maybe 2 weeks for me because I drink an awful lot of coffee and donuts when I'm working on a show.
It doesn't look like it. No donuts have gone anywhere on you.
No, still sturdy as rock.
Do you have people helping you?
The security guards who come in and give me the donuts and the coffee.
No. I mean, with these huge installations.
No, actually, I work by myself. I like the whole process. When I do it, one of the reasons why I decided to do that type of a show was because senators get up and start saying that an artist is on the fringe of society and doesn't reflect what a society is all about. Let's take away from the NEA, let's make these cuts and stuff. So what I'm trying to do is show the artist at work, actually working, physical labor practically doing this piece, and stopping to answer questions by the public who comes into a museum. Now that's a cross-section of people. It's from elementary school to senior citizen. So you're addressing all these different types of things that are going on in the process of making the piece.
You have a real interaction, and you can see it's really like stage. You're getting a feeling from what your audience or the people watching you.
And I think it's great to work in the studio, and I do work in the studio, and I'm great that artists make things and do it in behind closed doors and everything. But I think for me it was an important decision to do because I came out of a school of artists in the 70s of more performance conceptual type work. And so that had a big influence on the direction of my work, even to the things that I do now, which I wanted to take a very traditional media like painting because everybody was saying, oh, painting, it's dead, all of this sort of stuff. And so to me it was like adding an element of performance to a piece, making something that is traditionally very static and have an element of performance involved in it. So that's what I'm trying to do with the paintings.
They say your work is bold and humanistic. How do you explain that?
That's the press. At times it's like, for me, I think that reason, bold and expressionistic, it comes from the fact that
humanistic, because humanistic. I think you get to the human element of people.
Well, there's a sense of urgency, I think, behind a lot of the work that I do. I work very quickly. There's usually a deadline time period for that. But also that interaction with people, to me, is an important part, another element of it. I'm not trying to mystify anything that I do. I'm trying to be as honest about what it is that I do.
Just saying that brings to mind, would it be like the graffiti artists who were doing things immediately and getting them up before they got caught in a way?
I think that's how I initially started. In fact, I hit the Los Angeles County Museum in 1972.
What does hit mean?
Well, I sprayed my name on the outside, claiming the entire piece as my art piece, as an artist would sign a piece. So it was a conceptual thing, and all the contents within that museum. Now, 21 years later, I'm actually on the inside, and I'm defacing it on the inside now. So things sometimes change, but not that.
How do you feel about that? Would you have done it again?
There's a certain notion of returning to the scene of the crime that I don't particularly like, but you know, that's a part of what it is that I'm doing now these days, is showing in different types of situations.
One of the other things, and maybe you're going to attribute this to the press, is the difference between folk art and fine art. I think they said at one time Hispanic artists could make nothing but folk art, and you've demystified that as well, I think.
Right, that was an important part in, like, spray canning the LA County Museum. It was a conceptual piece. So it's like, not only do you do folk art, I mean, it's like there's a tradition in that, but also I think there's a lot of possibilities that are just wide open to experiment. To me, an artist is an explorer. They're constantly exploring new directions to go into. It's like the space program. I think money should be given to artists just as much as the space program is, because it is, in a sense, exploration.
Right. What are the feelings of yours as far as doing other things than just outside, inside, something more structured, like a theater piece?
Well, the theater, usually I pick projects that I really am interested in. I did a Japanese Hedda Gabler set in 1925 Japan. And I've done other productions like The Life of Chan Ching, who is Chairman Mao's wife. I also worked on projects in large theater places.
Do those things come out looking Hispanic, or do they come out looking Asian?
I think, you know, as an artist, you learn from each experience, and you incorporate things from all kinds of assortments of influences. And the Hedda Gabler set in 1925 Japan was, you know, I was studying tatami mats and soji doors, so I don't think, you know, there was any type of Latin sense to it, or
that's what I wondered.
But there are things that I'm really intrigued by, so I think the theater is one of those places where you can experiment on a large scale, especially if you work with great people, but sometimes you don't, and things don't work out that well.
Well, from the theater, it takes me back to your feelings of being with ASCO, which was a performance group, I think, at your very beginning days. Are you still performing with them?
I haven't performed with ASCO for maybe about 4 or 5 years. And the last performance was called Ismania, and it was about all the isms from abstract expressionism to zombieism, from the A to Z.
What do you do when you perform? Is it...
I look very good, and I talk to the people in the audience, and I actually I do a lot of...
Is it actual something that's set for you to do, or is it improvisational?
Well, a lot of the earlier pieces were improvisational. I used to take masking tape and tape people to the walls of cities. And I also did dinner parties on traffic islands with traffic going in both directions, and set up a dinner party. So those were all improvised.
Actually on the street, or in a...
Well, actually on the streets. It was not... A lot of the things that I was doing early on, you couldn't tell anybody that you were doing because it was against the law.
Sure.
But a lot of the documentation and stuff has accumulated over the years. Mostly through the 70s was a lot of different types of hit-and-run type of activity, where I would use the city as a canvas and do an activity in certain areas, or claim a certain building as something else other than what it was. All those projects were carried out through the 70s with OSCO, and OSCO is a group, and right out of high school, we decided to go into a garage, and instead of coming out of rock musicians, we came out artists instead. We practiced, we did our work inside of the garage, and then we went out into the streets and did all the work.
So were they the same people that continue, or did they drop in and drop out?
There was an accumulation. Over the years, a lot of other people wanted to work with us, so there was a lot of other people coming in. Some people are still working to this day. They're poets, writers, other artists, painters.
Can they go out and use the same name?
Yes, they can. I mean, they can do
Doesn't
whatever they
matter
want.
if you're with them?
Yeah, OSCO doesn't have any bylaws, or you don't join or admission or anything along those lines. It was just an activity for us to do. And OSCO in Spanish means nausea.
That's what I was going to...
So that was the reaction at first to our work in a lot of ways, was a lot of people thought, oh, that's disgusting, that's horrible, what are they doing? But so we took it on as our name and called ourselves OSCO.
Now, you explained what OSCO meant, nausea. What does Gronk mean?
Gronk means to fly. It's a word taken out of a National Geographic, and it's to fly or to soar.
It is.
Yeah,
it is an actual, name in the...
Yeah, and also the dinosaur from BC also uses it to scream out, I think.
How did you find it?
I didn't. My mother did.
She actually, you mean that's actually named, she actually named you that?
Yes, Joan, yes.
I'm so happy to know your mother loves that. Your mother's behind you.
Is she? Oh, yeah, there she is.
There
She's
she
Tormenta,
is.
yes.
Tormenta. I thought that was me. I love that.
Well, Joan, you can be my mother, too, if you want to.
Thank you. Who is Tormenta?
She's young, she's rich, she's beautiful, but she doesn't know who she is. And neither do we, because we never see her from the front. We only see her from the back.
She's not you.
Oh, no. But sometimes I think that the back can reveal more than what's up front.
Yes, the back, the back. One thing that you seem so out of the mainstream.
Oh, I do.
You do. Well, I think that was part of what you wanted to do, was to be out of the mainstream. And yet you have been awarded a National Endowment of the Arts for Fellowship Artists. How did that affect you, and how did that come about?
Well, I received that in 1983, and I received it in conceptual performance type work that I was doing. And so that was an early grant. I never since have received another grant. That was like the one thing that I applied for, and I got it, and I was grateful. It did allow me a lot of time to work out projects and to do pieces. And by 1985, since the grant was given to me in '83, I developed a body of work. And in '85, I did a show at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, which was MoCA. And that was the piece that was 300 feet by 30 feet high, the size of a football field. So right after that, there was a lot of other places that I started getting calls from. And different galleries approached me to sign in with galleries. And I decided to go with this strange, awkward man that came out of nowhere. His name is Dan Saxon. He was going to open up a gallery, and he showed me this barn. And I said, oh, I think I'll go with him. He's an oddball. So I signed with him, and now I'm sort of... I've been with him for, I guess, 8 years now.
Is it that long? Because Dan Saxon has really done a lot for contemporary art. And what I was thinking about with the NEA, did it make you feel more in the mainstream? Did it give you something that other people looked at you in a different light?
Perhaps wanting to borrow money.
I think along with that, and I have to be a little bit serious, is you've lectured at Cornell. You've lectured at the University of Texas. I know you have this lecture series that you do, and that also seems to be putting you back in the mainstream. Do you worry about that at all?
No, I think, I don't change that much. I think, perhaps the work does, but I can see like gradual changes in, the direction of my work. But I as a person, it's like I'm still the same person. To me, the most pleasant thing in the world for me 20 years ago was a cup of coffee and a piece of pie in front of me, and it's still that to this day.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because let's have pie and coffee together the next time. I'm glad to hear that you haven't changed.
Yeah.
And thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Joan, for asking me.
Thank you. And don't go away, because Carol Schlanger will be back to do a little performance. So we'll be back in a minute. Hi, we're back, and I'm just talking away with Carol Schlanger. She's a writer who also acts. Carol's appeared in The China Syndrome, The Frisco Kid, and what was the other one? Medea.
Oh, yeah.
With
That was
Dia.
right. That was quite a while ago at the Venice Film Festival.
She's written plays called Night Garbage, Stretch Marks, and The American Housewife. And her new project, which is Mouth to Mouth. They all sound autobiographical.
Yeah. Well, Medea is.
No, I meant your plays.
Yeah.
Let's talk about each of those. Stretch Marks.
Well, Stretch Marks was about my life as a hippie in the 70s when I lived in the Oregon backwoods on a commune and I had a baby in the back of a truck, and that was kind of what that piece was about. And my parents visited, and it sort of dealt with their reaction to my life.
It actually was produced off-Broadway, wasn't it?
Stretch Marks? Yeah, way off Broadway. Actually, it was at the First Stage here in LA. Yeah.
Now, what about Night Garbage? Is that also autobiographical?
Everything I do is because I'm really intensely involved with myself, I guess. But the Night Garbage was produced at the West Coast Ensemble, and it was about a man and woman kind of having a bitter battle in bed. It was a one act. It was really nicely done.
Did you act in any of these?
No, they didn't let me because the director always said, well, they said he was too frightened to let me do it because it's hard if you're the performer and the writer, because then if you disagree with the director, you sort of have a one-upsman.
That's what I was wondering.
You go, no, it's not that way. Thank you very much.
I didn't write it like that, right?
Yeah.
What about American Housewife?
Gee, American Housewife I did at the Public Theater when I was quite young, and it was kind of prophetic, and it was sort of a pre-Mary Hartman thing where a woman, sort of a housewife, goes insane involved with her laundry and her and her life. Loses it.
Were you a housewife at that time?
No, it was really weird because I was 24 at that time, but I did have a long stretch where I was a housewife and did go insane. And so, as I said, it was not totally, but it was prophetic. It was
but it happened afterwards, didn't it?
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
After American Housewife.
Yeah.
Do you think it was like a precursor? Did you have it in your mind?
I don't know. My life imitated my own art. That's what happened.
Then it seems like you were acting in films and doing different things. And then you took a hiatus.
Yeah.
Kind of from work, I think.
Well, I became a writer is what I did. I became a writer out here. I sort of went into television and became a television writer.
And what were you doing?
I did. I wrote a show called, I wrote sitcom. I did one called My Talk Show with Cynthia Stevenson and Stephanie Hodge for Imagine, and I, did spec scripts, and I had a couple of, little pieces produced here and there.
How did that actually take place when you were so used to, as you say, being involved with yourself?
Well, I got tired of myself is what happened. And it was really fun writing for other actors, and I loved actors, and I really understood actors, so I had a really good time, writing for them. Yeah, it
wasn't, you didn't take your feelings and stick it into their mouths?
Yeah, I did, actually.
You did?
Or I tried to extrapolate their spirit and enlarge on it.
I see, because I think that once you start doing things like that, it must be hard to stop.
Yeah, that's true.
Now you're back with a new project, and it's called Mouth to Mouth. And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's just about the most autobiographical thing that I've ever done, and it's a one-person thing, and it's about a middle-aged woman who has kind of forgotten her sense of artistry and her magnetism and anything powerful that was in her when she was young. She's sort of kind of a little bit gone down the tubes, and she's reawakened to her own potential and her own power as an artist by someone at a reunion. She goes to
Is this true? Did this happen?
Yeah.
Did you go to a reunion?
Yeah, I did. I did. And what was really interesting, do you want the true one?
Sure.
The true one is that this guy just responded to me the way that I used to be when I was in my 20s, which, I'd forgotten who that woman was, and I'm going, wow, this is great. And he brought out all this strength in me that I'd really forgotten that I'd had.
Was he the actor?
He was an actor, yeah.
And who is he?
Oh, no!
Is he in Hollywood?
No. The real one, I don't think. I think he's in New York now.
We can't play 20 questions and find out who he is.
No. Or you could. I'll play, but I'll cheat.
So you came home and you wrote this.
I wrote this. It sort of got me going. It made me remember really kind of what I want to do the most, which is writing and acting, because I love doing it, and it sort of got me out of some sort of place that I was in and moved me ahead, and that's what happened. And
well,
so
lead us into it. Lead us into something that we should, that we would like to hear from that play.
I mean, like set it up a little bit. Well, I can do a little bit. It's kind of it's a little risque, but I guess it's okay. It's cable television. And the setup being that in this part here, I'm just sitting at the table with this guy who's a major movie star, and I'm at a reunion table. And in the play, it's just space. We don't really see anything, you know. So I'm sitting at this reunion, and I'm kind of a little poor, and my clothes are a little bit shabbier, and everybody else is fabulously successful and very wealthy and very Hollywood except me. And then I talk to the movie star, and then later on I just go into a little piece about my husband. So that's what I do.
What piece can you
Do you want me to do it now?
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
because you told us a little bit about it.
Well, then I talk about my husband, who who I was married to for 20 years, who sort of lost his luster, and as is wont to happen when one is married for quite some time.
No, just a minute.
Oh, sorry. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, but and so I go into that, and I remember how great my husband really was too. So in this little thing that that I can do here.
Okay, great.
There's lots of stuff, but I'm trying to think. You want me to do it right now?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Let's watch Carol Schlanger do a little short piece from Mouth to Mouth.
And then I sat down next to Jeff, the mega movie star, whose real name isn't Jeff. Look, I can't tell you his real name. It would be too embarrassing for the both of us. So I sat down, and then he whispered into my ear. It was close enough that I could feel his breath, but loud enough so that everybody at the table could hear him. I mean, that made it more exciting. It was like this verbal ménage à 20. And he said, "I have always adored you. You are the most alive woman I've ever met. Just being with you makes me happy." He took my breath away. I was eating a sesame seed breadstick at the time, and I just started sucking on it. His voice, it was like butter slowly melting on a hot potato. Oozing over things. Warm, creamy, wonderful, velvet. Day after day, week after week, year after year, I did the shopping, and I took everybody to the dentist for fluoride treatments and stay-9 scores and SAT preparations, and believe me, nobody ever leaned over and said, "You are the most alive woman I have ever met. Just being with you makes me happy." They said, "This is good lasagna." And in the end, the sheets are cold, and I get the wet spot. I think I'll just end it right there.
But it is funny,
Yeah.
because you always go back to things that seem so wonderful, and then reality hits you.
Yeah, and I talk to the audience a lot, right,
and
right.
do you get this reaction from the audience? Do they want to talk back to you? Do you think, are you going to have that?
Yeah, I have, and I'm ready for that. I really try. It's sort of like I treat them like my best friend, and it's very, very, just like, I would talk to you, my new best friend, but it's very, very intimate on that level.
How does Ted Danson figure into this? Was he the movie star who whispered in your ear?
No! But he did back me. So
he's producing
it, yes, which is really wonderful for me.
Did you know him before?
Yes, actually, my family our families were friends because our kids went to school together.
Now, how would someone direct you, someone who's actually written this play and knows every nuance of what's going on? You can't, can you direct yourself, or do you have a director?
Oh, no, I have to have a director. And it's a really weird schizophrenic experience. One of the things you learn as an actor is you must trust the word, you must trust the author. But when you happen to know that the author is something of a lunatic, it's hard to trust the author, and you really need the director to pull out what's really in there and remind you sort of what this part of your brain is doing, so that this part of your brain can pick up on it.
Can he read you? Can he read what you really wanted to say? I mean, do you have disagreements in the way things happen?
Well, he kind of can hone it down. My director is Mark Travis, who's a wonderful director who has done this kind of thing before with Time Flies When You're Alive. I don't know if you know that piece, but he also did Chaz Palminteri's A Bronx Tale.
Oh, he did. Oh,
yeah,
the best.
Yeah, it's wonderful. and so he's very adept at kind of, you know, pulling this out of you, or at least finding what you've got already and helping to shape it. That's his forte.
Palminteri was a one-man person,
right.
one-act play, one-man, one-act piece.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
And you had to keep the action going. So you don't change clothes or change anything?
No, I just keep going, which is kind of scary because you're up there all by yourself, but it's really a thrill. It's wonderful.
How long is the piece?
I'd say it's about an hour and 20 minutes. I'm still in rehearsal now.
I see. What happened when you were at Yale Law School? Did you learn to do
the drama school.
I mean, at the drama school. I don't know why I said.
Could have been the law school.
You should have.
Yeah.
You should have been a lawyer.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
What did you learn? Did you learn anything that you could apply to what you're doing now?
Well, sure. And I think the thing that I learned the most there that I think I'm taking a little bit is I had a chance to meet Paul Sills when he was teaching at Yale, who was sort of my teacher. And I was always torn between writing and acting, even when I was young. But he kind of because I create a little bit of a space. I'm not that Sillsian, but it helped me kind of understand space work, which is you know.
So that really works.
Yeah.
Now. And understanding space and understanding time, you know that we have to leave.
Brilliant. Well, it's been fun.
Thanks very much for being with us.
You.
And Mouth to Mouth,
That's
Carol
right.
Schlanger.
Theater Geo, I start previewing the 20th. No, I can't say that. Oh, and I open the 7th of April.
That's okay. Great. Thank you. Thanks. We'll all see Mouth to Mouth. And thanks for being with us on the Joan Quinn Profiles. We'll see you next time.